past all of them as well. What a move to the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Worth of racing starts right here, and boy, could this be any more close than what it is right now. We know we got a pro championship split by the barest of margins. 3 rounds, 3 weeks left. So now it's about step up to the plate, or 6 races will decide who gets what. Your World GT Championship is on a knife edge, and we come to the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which will be a true street circuit test, as if it could be any more IMSA out there as we race in the St. Lawrence River. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jake Sperry. You've got Nathan Richards along with me for the ride alongside, with a lovely shaved head as we saw at Sim Expo a few weeks ago. But Nathan, as it goes, we are so stoked with this championship, and we know we are right on that precipice of every mistake now will be scrutinised.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, I was here at the start of the season. I've been away for a few races, and it's still as close as it was after round 2, which is great to see here in the World GT Championship. Of course, you can see the schedule on your screen. As Jake said, 3 rounds to go, 6 races in total, and tonight we head, in my opinion, to one of the most interesting tracks, because it's a very difficult track to drive. It's very difficult to get into the flow, and it's also one of the newer circuits on the game, so many drivers probably haven't driven that much around this circuit.
And we can confirm that Sonoma will be replaced next week by the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. So that was a placeholder in the calendar, and now they will move to there. Your pro standings, just the 3 championship points. There are only 2 weeks left of drop rounds for Alexander Davidson and James Boomey to make their points known. Ross McFarlane, still on an outside shot, is going to need perfection to run himself anywhere close to those up at the top, with Anders Mira in 4th position and Matthias Pirhanen in 5th. It is then Michael Evdoka trying to leapfrog those two. He's 5 points behind Pirhanen, with Arthur Thurtle, Harrison Crowther, Adam Watson and Dennis Grabowski making up the top 10. In Pro-Am, with no Michael Gray last time out, it has now allowed William Guthrie to put a sizable dent into the championship right now, with Aidan Carter sat in 3rd and Phil Samways in 4th. Tommy Vedel is the one in P number 5. You've then got a couple of nomads in 6th and 7th, with Håkon Idle Lindmo and Chris Chatterton. Dickie Simnor is in 8th place, with Tom Griffiths in 9th, and your top 10 rounded out by Eric Muxka then in the Murmaka MA70 team. You then go to AM, and it is still in the balance between Daniel McCauley and Ben Ultra. It's a case after a wonderful mid-part of the season for Dan of a game of tit for tat out there as they have gone through. Jesse Payne-Wilkins, the understandable deputy behind Ben Ultra, in 3rd, ahead of Jacques Eva, who is 20 points clear of Joe Coffin. Is then at the Mr. Hedge cards of Adam Hedgecock and Brian Loyne, 6th and 7th. Paul Smith for Cracked Racing is 8th, only 8 points clear of Benjamin Gregory for Boosted in 9th, and Drew Fletcher for Series 1 rounds out the top 10, 10 points back of that. Team Pro standings look like they are about to go the way of WSR Esports, which is exactly what the doctor ordered for them over Altitude Frame, with Racing Lab and Altitude Esports by SimStickers still in a close battle, 33 points between them. Nomad, a little bit lonely in 5th, with Atomic Esports XDCW. And then you got Effect Simulations there in 7th, Atomic Esports 8th, and Solpec Precision Racing in 9th. And over in Team AM, it is Full Tilt V Motorsports ahead of Full Tilt Motorsport, but they've got to be worried about Series 1, who are there at 200 odd points back. They still have a chance to close down, with Altitude Frame Esports, Mr. Hedge, Boosted Motorsports, Project 91 Academy team, and then Effect Simulations Club Sport making up the Team AM standings. Starting grid then looks as follows, and it is tight up there for James Boomey. He has stolen the pole away from Ross McFarlane, 13 thousandths of a second. The Scot couldn't quite get close enough. Alexander Davidson will have to go from behind James Boomey in 3rd place, with Anders Mira 4th, and your leader in Pro-Am, William Guthrie, great qualifying for the Northern Irishman in 5th. Arthur Thurtle will go from 6th. It's then Matthias Pirhanen and Michael Evdoka, with Ben Ultra, stellar qualifying for him, the AM, going from 9th, and Phil Samways in 10th. It then follows Dennis Grabowski and Michael Gray, 11th and 12th. Tom Griffiths and Aidan Carter will house row 7. Then there is the AM Championship leader, Daniel McCauley, who will go from 15th. Tommy Vedel is along with him in 16th. Row 9 with Richard Simnor. Dickie is there in 17th, and Jesse Payne-Wilkins 18th. Patrick Falconer and Brian Loynes make up the top 20, with Drew Fletcher and Benjamin Gregory, as Jacques Eva and Taylor Lane are 23rd and 24th. Elliot Roberts and then Håkon Idle Lindmo means that the Nomad cars are a little bit off the pace today, with Ben Bennyworth and Nathan Healy 27th and 28th. Paul Smith will be donning the poppy today. He's in 29th, with Adam Hedgecock in 30th position, leaving the gentleman John Roberts, Jack Osborne there in 32nd, a little bit out of position, with Joe Coffin and Lee Berridge. The last driver who was unable to set a time by virtue of penalty points was Adam Watson. So the Altitude Esports by SimStickers driver will have a lot to do. Drivers pulling themselves away then and getting themselves ready, and those track conditions out there, we had a tiny glimpse over at them here, Nathan, but 21 degrees. It's a cold track, and this will mean drivers will be dancing icily on those tyres here for this half a warm-up lap.
Yeah, certainly, and probably a few of them will struggle on that first opening lap, getting the tyres warmed up, but just getting accustomed to the conditions. And of course, we have 2 races here this evening. It's a big round for Davidson and Boomey, who, as we say, are separated by 3 points. And with Boomey sitting 2 positions ahead of Davidson, that already gives them enough points to try and take that championship lead back. So for those 2 and McFarlane, who sits in 2nd, it's, I think, more about getting to the end of this race rather than battling and trying to force a move where it's not really needed.
Got to remember, this is a circuit of close quarters action. 3 very important chicanes out there. The 3 and 4 chicane. The chicane going through 7 and 8. And then this one with the Wall of Champions, which we find the camera on. Will it be a champion decider today as James Boomy gets an early launch sorted? The green flag drops, and now it becomes a question of who does what. Into line, Mira gets absolutely nose chopped in towards turn 1. Pierden dropping back off at the start as well as they work through the Senna S for the first time, or the Virage Senna as it is. And at least for the moment, one car had a bit of trouble. Dennis Grabowski with a hard slide, but it is clean as they work to 3 and 4.
It certainly is a great start from Mennies. We have a few too wides heading down into that opening chicane, but they all make it through safe and sound. And a brilliant start from our top 6, already starting to pull a gap to Guthrie and those below, and a brilliant start as well, I think, from Ben Ultra, as we have a big collision in towards 6 and 7. I'm not sure who that is.
Well, it's one of the Mr. Hedge cars. Jesse Payne Wilkins is caught up in that, so the reliable deputy there in trouble. Brian Lloyd's the other one, and there's another car in trouble out there heading to that third chicane. There's 4 involved, and Dennis Grabowski is the one that has gone around. Nathan Healy's been caught up. Adam Hedgecock has been caught up in it, and a third car goes around at the next chicane. That's Aidan Carter in the Lamborghini.
Indeed, that's what, 7-8 cars on the opening lap all around, or some of them have big damage as well, especially onto the rear of their GT3s. A very chaotic start here around the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve, but I wouldn't say that's much of a surprise. It is a difficult track. We've seen in many different sim racing games, it's always a difficult track for drivers, as Michael Gray makes a move, jumps up into 8th, second in the prime category, ahead of Phil Samways as we make our way back down to turn 1.
A slowdown penalty for Michael Gray. All that effort. Worst time to get it. Lap 1. That will be about 4 seconds.
Yep, and that's not good at all for Michael Gray, who now drops down a few positions as Matthias Bahonen goes up into 8th place, ahead of Samways as well. And one thing I was looking at earlier, actually, my research, was 14 different drivers in the Prima category have had a podium this season, and I think 5 of those have had a win of very competitive categories. Here's Jack Osborne looking to make moves. He goes up into 25th position as they head in towards the chicane once again, turns 3 and 4, and a chicane as well, Jake, which is very tricky. But then we say that every chicane around here is a tricky one, so making moves, you've kind of got to be quite brave into some of those braking zones, haven't you? It's not a given, even if you are side by side.
No, it isn't. Jack Osborne has gained 6 off at the start, and he's got a car that looks like my RAM in my computer right now. So absolutely wonderfully bright and brilliant car to have a look at as it works through the Atomic Esports machine, then through that third chicane and looking down to Lepangle, the hairpin out there on track. Now let's take a look here on lap 1. Turn across the nose and then a massive smash into the corner. It's so easy to do. You're fighting for room, and then especially at a street circuit, where does the accident go?
Into a wall, and that's the only place, isn't it? A big shame there for the 3 cars involved. And then we saw Aidan Carter, I think, got tapped heading in towards the turn 8 and 9 chicane. A big shame for him, who's had a brilliant season so far, 3rd in the standings. And there, yes, did get tapped. Was on the outside. It's always a risky spot on lap 1, but of course sometimes you have to go for those early overtakes. A big shame there for Aidan Carter, who respectfully waited for all the cars to go through instead of trying to do what we see from many drivers, which is just get back onto the track and hope nobody ends up hitting into you. As that's a collision there, I think that's Patrick Falconer around.
Oh, Paddy's not going to be pleased with that one, and it's in a very awkward place coming out of 3. He just got the tag side by side. Ben Gregory was immediately on the brakes the moment he had contact to avoid that sort of incident. And look at this. This is going to be something even Austin Powers would be very unhappy about. Which way is it? Forward? Have I got enough clearance? Yeah, right. You can go, but you're missing the spoiler.
Certainly, and that's going to lose a lot of downforce and make it very difficult to take that car around the circuit, as you can see, into 3 and 4. And this was a contact, very slight contact there with an Aston Martin, but of course the very little contact sometimes can cause some of the bigger incidents as we head our way back down towards turn number 10. Of course, a very heavy braking zone for the hairpin. See 2 Mercedes make their way through. Brilliant action so far, but of course up at the front it's Boomy that leads ahead of McFarlane, and then another 6 to 7 tenth gap back to Alexander Davidson, and then there's another 1.5 seconds back to Anders Meyer. So the top three, as always, a really positive start.
Yeah, the top three breaking away from Anders Mira, and they will look at that and say, good job. Arthur Thurtle having a good race as well in 5th position. Guthrie still in control of his category in 7th, an Ultra of his in 10th. A little bit of sunshine now comes peeking out behind the clouds into the 3 and 4 chicane, and just for the briefest moment, a break of a second. It's technical for 75% of the lap. The other 25% of the lap, though, here, Nathan, I think is really critical to know. It is where you would say overtake central comes out of the hairpin, along Casino Straight, over to that final chicane. That is where you find it. Taking a look here with William Guthrie, who's looking for a way past Michael Evdoka. That would be for SIG, Pro-Am versus Pro. But remember, they're singing from the same hymn sheet, so Guthrie's trying to extend his points margin with a pass here.
Certainly, and a brilliant start here by William Guthrie, as we've seen a lot this season on the back of Michael Evdoka, who has had a win. So to be a Pro-Am driver fighting with a Pro who's taken wins and podiums, that shows the skill that William Guthrie has. As there was a couple moves further back, I think it was Dickie Seymour up into 14th ahead of Taylor Lane, and then also Jesse Payne-Wilkins making a move ahead of John Roberts for 29th place, as Guthrie still on the back of Evdoka, but there's going to be no chance down towards this chicane, as we do see Adam Watson making a move, already up 14 spots in this race. Of course, down near the back is not where we often see Adam Watson, as we do see Ross McFarlane take the lead. I think James Boomy might have got a slow down.
Well, if you're pushing hard to build a gap like James Boomy is, you're now going to find you're on the back foot. He was heavy over the curb and then realised, oh, no, I've clocked one and I'm going to have to try and bring that pace back. Remember, these drivers are going to get bonus points if they find themselves as the cleanest driver in their category, but they're going to lose points out there if they're over a set amount of instants, so you can't push the boundaries here. It will cost your championship. That was a very wrecked-looking Mercedes going through, as we take a look at Jack Osborne making his progress on the back of the now Aston Martin of Ben Bennyworth. He's moved away from the Porsche for the final few rounds of the season. Through that first chicane, Paul Smith sat on the back, watching this one eagerly and anticipating what's going to happen. But James Boomy down into 3rd. What a shock that will be for him, and that will wake him up here in his 45-minute first race of tonight.
Certainly, and I think he'll be kicking himself at that, because that was pretty much a gifted win in the sense of there was never really a challenge from Davidson or McFarlane, of course, who now take P1 and P2 in this race as we make our way through the turns 8 and 9 chicane. Someone going very wide out of there, and of course bouncing over that curb as Dennis Grabowski makes a move, and here's Jack Osborne. As there we are, Mr. Paul Smith, of course, with the poppy on his hat. Great to see Paul here driving once again, and currently in 24th. A great drive so far from one of our AM drivers, and hopefully we can see him try and move past Ben Bennyworth and up into 23rd.
Especially, of course, remember Sunday was this past weekend, and Paul Smith commemorating then with the poppy, as he will look behind him here and sees it's Håkon Ida Lindmo, the Norwegian, trying to figure out a way for that McLaren to jump by the BMW. And we typically know that McLaren has a very good streamlined setup, but Paul cops a slow down penalty, and so Håkon Ida Lindmo jumps himself up the place, easy as you like.
Certainly, and that final chicane through the wall of champions, it's such a difficult pace to get right, and you know, not just here in our race, you can see a lot on the F1 games where it's very easy to pick up a track limits warning, or on here a slowdown. So you've just got to get that chicane pitch perfect, or if you don't do that, you end up losing a bit of time. So it's all about balancing that risk through there. Already a couple of drivers losing spots due to mistakes through there, as Arthur Thurtle drops 2 spots and he's into the barriers.
Well, Arthur Thurtle, who was getting under a bit of pressure from Michael Evdoka and from William Guthrie, drops it all on his own through the 3rd chicane. He had just pulled out a ½ a second, and he's got to wait for the whole group to go by.
Oh, what a shame there for Thurtle, who was up in the top 7. As here is Phil Samways under pressure from Ben Ultra. We have in the top 10 a Pro-Am fending off from an Am. It's not something we say that often as they head into the final chicane. And of course, hopefully none of them take a slowdown through here. Both of them throwing themselves over the curb and back down towards turn 1 they go. And Altria has had a brilliant drive all season and now looking to jump up into the top 8.
He'll want a way through, but he'll know that he's got time on his side, 35 minutes, so he's heavy over that curb, unsettles the Porsche, and it just loops. It's a slow loop, and you're looking to try and get downforce back in, and you're just never going to find it. Full Tilt V Motorsport fends off Full Tilt Motorsport, and both clatter the wall going through 3 and 4. They were caught watching each other's brake marks there.
Certainly, and of course, around here, when you go for a battle, sometimes you have to take a big risk, and that's what Ben Altria is going to have to do if he wants to get up into the top 8 and get ahead of Phil Samways, who once again has had a very comfortable drive so far in the first 11 minutes of this race as they head into the third chicane at turns 8 and 9, both hopping over the curbs, and they've got to be careful there because, as we saw with Arthur Thurtle, very easy to get unsettled over that curb on the inside, as now Altria could be looking for an opportunity. No, stays back for now, and I think that shows his pace as he goes for an up and under, very deep there from Samways, and what a move there from Ben Altria up into 8th place, took advantage of a mistake for Phil Samways, and now up into the top 8.
It's now 3 Full Tilt cars in a line, and behind them the AM category championship leader there, that looming Mustang of Dan McCauley, who will want to try and get himself into play. So Altria knows he needs the gap, he needs to run. Looks like Aidan Carter's lost a place to Lee Berridge out there in 4th position, but Dan McCauley, he might have struggled a little bit in qualifying compared to Ben Altria. His race pace though is second to none in that AM category.
Certainly, and I mentioned James Boomy, but I think it's more highlighting to Alexander Davidson. 4.4 seconds off the leader. It was only a second before what happened, whether it was a slowdown or maybe a mistake from Davidson. But now Boomy back up into 2nd place with a 2-second gap to McFarlane. And I think once again what we're seeing from Ross McFarlane is not that ultra pure pace, it's that consistency, and Boomy and Davidson now both making mistakes have rewarded McFarlane with a 2.5-second lead here in this race, and that's something he'll be very pleased with. Of course, has taken a couple of wins this season, would love to make it his 3rd.
It's the first part of the chicane he's cut, which is the more heavier of the penalty compared to cutting the second part of it. So for Alexander Davidson, he almost clattered the wall of champions on the exit, and James Boomy didn't know which way to go, had to check up, and so Alexander Davidson let him go to the inside, and then, you know, James Boomy, yeah, he got through, but the time is there. It brings Anders Mira now back into the picture here, and I don't remember, I think you have to go back to Spa this season here, Nathan, for a time where those two drivers, Davidson and Boomy, both made mistakes in a race.
Certainly, it's not often at all we see these two making not small mistakes, quite harsh ones, both of them losing that lead at some points, as Mira now on the back of Davidson as they head through in towards the first opening corners. 32 minutes to go in this race, so there's a long time here for Mira to make some moves, but also there's a long time for Boomy and Davidson to try and recover from their mistakes so far in this race. But still, I've got to say, a brilliant job from Ben Altria up into the top 8 here, of course getting ahead of Phil Samways, and now pulling a seconds gap as here's Jack Osborne up the inside into 20th spot. A brilliant start from him as well as Davidson's round.
And that makes life doubly difficult, and again, this time on his own, he just tips the car into the corner, it loops around, it had to be avoiding action for Anders Mira, and Davidson now drops and looking around. That's Ben Altria wanting to try and get through. I never thought I'd see this on outright ability at this moment. It is pure pace against AM and Pro championship drivers out there at this point. So now you're seeing what Altria wants to do, but Alexander Davidson, I don't think he looked comfortable in qualifying just before we came on air, and he's really showing he's not comfortable here today. You can see, tips the car in, and the back just lets go.
I mean, I think he's more lucky not to make contact. A few cars having to avoid him there, and a big shame for Alexander Davidson. But as we see, you know, seen many times before, one mistake sometimes could lead to many others, and now he sees himself in 7th spot. Boomy up to P2, closing in as well on the back of Ross McFarlane. As you said, we never expect to see the Pro leader ahead and trying to defend off from the AM leader as Altria looking for an opportunity.
Phil Samway's slow down penalty, it's really starting to eat up at these drivers. They know they have to attack those curbs on the chicane, but they can't afford to go over that white line with all 4 tyres. If they do, they are going to get pinged by the iRacing system, and this might just be a case of who can paint between the lines. You know, this isn't freedom of expression right now, this is paint by numbers.
Certainly is, and booming out all over the back of Ross McFarlane. That gap has came down to below half a second. It was over 2 seconds. It's now down to 4/10. A big opportunity for Boomy to take the lead and try and extend that gap to Alexander Davidson. Before this race, the gap was 3. Will now be putting Boomy on top heading into the second race of the evening. Of course, if he can get into the lead, it makes it even higher of a gap to leading the championship. Of course, Mira up in 3rd, and another podium for him could be on the cards. Ev Docker in 4th, and William Guthrie up into the top 5 overall. A brilliant result from him if he can keep himself there. But of course, you've got Perhonen and Davidson as well, who are starting to close that gap up once again. And here is Boomy all over the back of McFarlane.
Yeah, he got a lovely run, but I think he had to temper it halfway through. Now he'll have to have a look at the centre chicane to make it happen, but this time he's going to lift out. He knows he's got a lot of time to go and construct this one, and they've got traffic in front. No rear wing for Adam Hedgecock in the Mr. Hedge machine out there, and his teammate Brian Loynes in front next to be lapped. So for the moment, Ross McFarlane is going to be stuck in a little bit of a tough situation where he just has to look behind, cover off the corners he needs to, hits the brakes into that section. There's a lot of smoke down there as they go through, because I think Loynes has gone and had a moment. So now they'll get the clearance they work through, but it's now just about keeping that momentum up, knowing that this is a rhythm circuit, street circuits, and muscle memory is going to pay the most when you get out there. And again, getting a good run, but having to stop. Little tag at the wall there by Boomy.
Certainly, and we could possibly see team gains heading into this one. Of course, both Davidson and McFarlane part of WSR Esports, and McFarlane's not going to really not got any chance really of taking the championship drivers wise, and they've pretty much covered it off for the constructors. So maybe now McFarlane can do his job and try and keep Boomy behind and in second place, just to lower that deficit that Davidson will have to Boomy heading into the second race, and then of course into the final 2 events for the season as they head into the final couple of corners. And once again, Boomy all over the rear of Ross McFarlane. He's closing in just to below 2/10, but of course he's got to at one point risk it and go for the move.
Well, it's about think about the long term in this race. You're not going to win this race by making this move right now, but you absolutely could lose it if you're not too careful. And then coming through the corner, they are okay at this point in time. A change back down the order. Dan McCauley through on Michael Gray. That will move him up right behind Ben Ultra. It's great news for Dan McCauley. It's great news for William Guthrie. It's another car in between him as he looks to work on 4th place and Michael F. Docker. But again, street circuits, the sort of place where it suits certain drivers.
Yeah, certainly you have drivers that, you know, flurry on a track which is more of an open circuit. Then here the street circuits, they're difficult, but of course some drivers prefer that challenge and somehow perform better when they've got more of a challenge for them. As once again Boomy all over the rear of Ross McFarlane. The question is, where does he go for the move? He's going to go for it now.
Big lunge down the inside, but he's overcooked the braking zone here. And Ross McFarlane, ever the wise guy, looks at that and goes, well, I'll have a look at the knitting prowess there. I'll knit one, I'll purl one, I'll come back up and under and take that place. Boomy will take the run, though, coming along towards this chicane. He's had 2 laps of sitting back and saying, it's not worth my time. He lifts slightly earlier, he looks for the run coming out of the final chicane. But again, Ross McFarlane is eager to the power, and James Boomy can only watch as he goes on by and sees. Again, turn 1 and 2, not going to be the place he gets this done, as just leaving the pits then will come Arthur Thurtle.
Certainly been a brilliant job of defence here, and coping well under the pressure is Ross McFarlane, because when you've got James Boomy or I think even Alexander Davidson behind you, those are 2 of the drivers you do not want in your mirrors. And McFarlane's doing a great job of keeping Boomy behind, who's gone for a move on a couple of occasions but has made a mistake in doing so himself, as they're both still extending that gap to Anders Mira, so that means they can afford to battle because they haven't got to worry about that car in third closing up. Of course, Davidson has brought that gap down to Matthias Perhonen, but yet not close enough for a move. Give it a couple of laps, he might be, and of course he'll be trying to climb up the field as quickly as possible as Boomy all over the rear of McFarlane.
Now to the outside, trying to get this done. McFarlane with a full block defence on the inside. Now, can he run him out of road? No is the answer. So he's going to say, right, I'm going to get nice and narrow off the exit. I can pick up a bit of help from that Porsche in front, but this is going to be a long casino straight. And who gambles best out of these two as they work themselves through middle of the road, defends it, forces the line to the outside here by James Boomy. McFarlane is just playing couch commander with the middle of the road and using that one movement that he requires to make sure that James Boomy does not have a chance to go and make this move here. So this is some great defending by Ross McFarlane. It's exactly what he wants and Alexander Davidson wants, as Davidson finds himself right on the back of the Docker Express. It's a 4-car train out there at this moment in time.
Certainly, and of course if Davidson can get back up into the top 4, it's not going to be the worst result in the world, but currently in P7 he's going to cause a big deficit. Of course he's got Perhonen, Guthrie, Docker as well, all ahead of him in a big train. He's just got to try and pick them off one by one. He's got the pace, but of course he's got to be able to make those moves as well. As we head back down towards the hairpin on the bottom half of the screen, but with McFarlane and Boomy, they're still battling for that leading spot. And then, of course, on the top half of the screen, we see that battle from 4th down to 7th. Of course, they've all left Altria, McCauley and Gray behind. They're all now focusing on fighting for that one step away from the podium and finishing off the top 5. As further down, Dennis Grabowski up ahead of Ben Bennyworth, up into 23rd, having a bit more of a decent comeback compared to where he was earlier on.
And he'll be looking at reverse grids for race number 2 and trying to sneak himself into a very strong position there to make that manageable, as again on the front it is a case of can you find that move and can you unlock it? Boomy trying once more to work the Oracle and can't quite get there, and Docker gives enough launch to Guthrie, to Perhonen, to Alexander Davidson. It's one of the toughest scenarios you can be in as a driver, stuck in a train knowing there is not much you can do to get in front of the cars around you, and that drive is going to be critical. Perhonen peeks out looking for a move. Davidson was uber late on the brakes and had to be very cautious there because he very nearly had to pick a line of diminishing returns.
Certainly that could have been a possible race ender there for both of them heading in towards turn 1 as they make their way through. And Davidson is probably frustrated because he knows he has the pace, he just can't quite make the move as they head back in towards the turn 6 and 7 chicane, closing in again, but not enough to make an overtake. Stays in P7. And once again, that gap there between Boomy and McFarlane has slightly increased now, just over 6/10 between the two. As here we see Davidson looking for the move into 6 and 7, has to back out there, but something's telling me here, Jake, he might go for a move down towards turn 10.
Yeah, Lepangle could be the corner where it gets done, and Perhonen might just be sensitive to it here. Davidson has to go for a long way back, and he does. Launch it down the inside, just about. Gets to the apex and needs to drive off the exit. Side by side they'll be. Now they'll race for the tail of William Guthrie here. That will give them the drag they need. A long casino straight to go and get it done. No moves then for McFarlane and for Boomy still, but this is where you're going to need to rely on each other. They are wing mirror to wing mirror, and Perhonen yields the corner, which I'm quite shocked about.
I'm shocked, but also, then again, he's got to look after his own race, and is it worth losing a spot to the championship leader and or staying there and ended up in a barrier? You've got to balance that, and Perhonen not minding just dropping back to 7th place and allowing Davidson through. As in the pits goes Michael Gray from P10, as he's Elliot Roberts side by side in towards the chicane, as that's somebody entering the pit lane.
Jacques Eva of Rhino Racing then hitting the lane. So those stops are starting to put themselves in. We know that we got 2 lots of 45 minutes here. As far as they go, it's not going to be the 30 in the hour. So Michael Gray getting that sustenance, and so you'll look around at those, looking at these pit stops, and Michael Gray gets a speeding on pit exit there. So that's going to really hurt for his Pro-Am category championship aspirations. William Guthrie may just have a hand on the trophy with that moment.
Certainly a big shame there for Michael Gray, and that is something that William Guthrie would love to see at the top of his screen. It now puts him in such a rewarding situation, and he's also up in the top 5 on the back of Michael Evdocker. A P4 still could be on the cards for him as we head back down towards the final chicane. Once again, the gap between Boomy and McFarlane has decreased once more, down to 2.5 tenths between the two. Ahead of them is a lapped car who hopefully move out the way for them shortly. Is that Arthur Thurtle potentially?
Yeah, so Thurtle had made it stop. He was on new tyres, so he was looking to really go about it, and now he sits back, he realises, no, I'm going to have to let them go. And I think that would have been a call up there from the likes of James Boomy going, what are you doing? You are giving Ross McFarlane the tools to defend against me. I want to attack.
Certainly, and as soon as I think the call came through, he's moved out the way, and now Boomy can go back onto the attack as Lane and Griffiths are in the pit lane. More drivers looking to make their pit stops here with around 19 minutes to go in this race. So just over halfway in this one here. And of course, it's McFarlane that leads ahead of Boomy. Weaver up in the top 3.
Big move from Alexander Davidson. He's just got the pass done there on William Guthrie. That one done into the second of the chicane. So Guthrie leaves the door open from the lunge, and Alexander Davidson, I'm not sure he's going to have much resistance at all here from Michael Evdocker. I think he'll know what's up.
Certainly, and I think he'll be looking to make that move as soon as possible and jumping up into 4th place as we head down towards turn 10. But of course, both of them being teammates, I don't think there'll be much of a hold up there, as this is a replay through the second chicane, and then we continue on. Boomy in second on the back of McFarlane. Davidson will still be looking for a top 4 here, and I think once he gets into the top 4, he can just comfortably get that car to the end of the race and limit that gap lost. As McFarlane goes in, Boomy stays out.
Yeah, so this will be to try and overcut this. Remember, the tyres will be cold when they come out of the exit with 18 minutes to go. Also in goes Guthrie and Davidson. Evdocker stays out for another lap, along with Matthias Pirhinen, Ultra and Macaulay. Both your AMP drivers fighting for the win. They've come in pretty much nose to stern, and it's a longer pit lane here because of the way it was scanned. This was scanned for the likes of IndyCar and NASCAR, not a Formula-style pit lane.
Certainly, as we see many more cars now enter the pits, most of them pitting on this lap. And here is McFarlane, exits the pit lane, of course, through turn 1, a very wide angle, and then you boot your foot to the floor on the exit. But of course, you've got to be careful of those cold tyres, and I think the last corner that you want to enter on cold tyres is the chicane at turns 3 and 4. A very difficult chicane as Macaulay has been black flagged.
Oh no, Dan the man, he's been so good all season long, and I think he was just a little too eager getting up onto the noisy pedal, and because of that, that's going to give a huge advantage in the championship to bring that gap back up. And Adam Watson, who had started from the back with no qualifying time, he also gets dinged for it.
Certainly does. Many drivers now taking the black flag as we continue on, and of course McFarlane looking not to take one by the seams of it. Many drivers are getting the black flags as James Boomy, I believe, now into the pit lane. Of course, this is crucial for him. Get in and get out as quickly as possible and try and limit that gap. Back to Ross McFarlane as Anders Mira as well into the pit lane. I'm sure it won't be long before Evdocker, Pirhinen and then Alexander Davidson all come in.
Well, Davidson's already jumped in and he's come back out, and he's 10 seconds down on Ross McFarlane, so that won't be pressure for James Boomy, who now is taking service. Through the final chicane goes Ross McFarlane. Remember where the exit point will be for James Boomy. It will be turn 2 that you need to look at here, and it is a short shoot run. He starts leaving. There goes McFarlane. Through turn 1 he'll look. Through turn 2 he'll see the gap is there, and James Boomy's overcut him.
He certainly has. Brilliant there from James Boomy, but his tyres will be cold. And this is now where McFarlane's got to get on the back of him as quickly as possible. As here's Evdocker and Pirhinen. Evdocker's been jumped in the pit lane down to P5 for Abducker, up to P4 there for Matthias Bohonen. Brilliant from him in the pit lane. And then Alexander Davidson behind them all in P6 ahead of William Guthrie, with Altria, Samways and Vidal reigning off the top 10. But a brilliant pit stop there by James Boomy, who now leads, and hopefully for him can just try and defend from Ross McFarlane, who couldn't really do much to attack, it seems, considering his defence. He was kind of all over the place, keeping Boomy behind.
It screams short fill to me for Matthias Pirhinen, and Abducker plays the card and sees Multi 55 on his dash and says, yep, gonna let you go. Alexander Davidson then up into fifth. He'll want away past Matthias Pirhinen as quickly as possible, but that's the job of Pirhinen today. He's now got to hold him back with Mira in third position. You've got to wonder now what Ross McFarlane has compared to James Boomy, because he knows that he'll only have the heat for a couple laps, and then Boomy looked like he was on absolute rails when he came to getting around this circuit. I don't know if McFarlane's got enough on pure pace to get back by.
I think it's going to be more of a mistake from Boomy. That will put McFarlane in the lead. It seems Boomy just had that overall pace, even when he was trying to attack. When he was trying to attack and now defending, he seems once again that little bit more comfortable and has a little bit more pace than Ross McFarlane, as Aidan Carter makes a move up into 16th ahead of Elliot Roberts and trying to recover from that early race mistake, and now on the back of Denis Grabowski.
Yeah, so Grabowski there, who is the pro driver, who has been trying to work hard to get through, with Carter, with Roberts, with Gregory, all in that line. He's trying to escape through. Patrick Falconer with a spin at the final corner would have caused a little bit of concern for many out there as he pulls over to one side. Scrap as well between Taylor Lane and Tom Griffiths. Oh my goodness, look at Griffiths go! Oh, look at Griffiths go! Round he goes. In the end, Taylor Lane kept it pinched, and Griffiths takes the tap, and round he goes.
Certainly, and like we've seen before, a very difficult corner to come out of, especially side by side. One driver is going to end up in a barrier, and unfortunately it was Griffiths. A big shame for him, who rejoins a few positions down and has to try and recoup and get back going once again. A big shame for Griffiths. Here's the replay on our screens. Very close to contact. It barely looked like any, but unfortunately Griffiths was round and Taylor Lane continues on us. Here we go for the lead once again. Boomy still ahead of McFarlane. That gap's consistent, but it should be coming down if McFarlane wants that chance of going for the leading position.
Well, I'm looking through that final corner here, Nathan, and I want to get your opinion on this. James Boomy is almost kissing the wall of champions. I'm looking around here at Ross McFarlane. He's being a lot more cautious as Matthias Pirhinen loses out fourth place. Alexander Davidson gets it done at one.
Certainly a brilliant move there from Davidson up into fourth. And of course Boomy has got to be careful heading through the wall of champions. He's been very close to it so far, and sometimes 1 metre, well, maybe a couple of centimetres too much can be a race ender. And McFarlane a lot more conservative through that corner. Here's a replay once again into turn one, and that would have been the move there by Alexander Davidson up into fourth place. And considering he was down in 10th earlier on, he's had a great recovery, but of course there's still 3 positions between him and Boomy in Boomy's favour.
The big loser in the pit stop was William Guthrie. He's now down to 7th in this one as McFarlane hugs the rear of James Boomy going through Lepangle and up the Droite du Casino. They will go next, the Casino straight, and now they'll be thinking 12 minutes to go. Where's it going to work? Only 2 places for Guthrie now between him and Phil Samways. Ben Ultra with a light year to Elliot Roberts, who is 2nd right now overall. No looks through here again, as aggressive as you like, and again you must stamp out and see that Ross McFarlane has a car that can't take as much of the track that James Boomy does. Of course it is the same Mustang between them, just set up slightly differently, and the driving style's different there. A little bit more of a conservative nature from Ross McFarlane.
Certainly, and of course just balancing that risk and risk to pace, and would rather have a car that isn't as quick over the curbs and isn't as close to the walls ahead, as they was both very close out of turns 3 and 4. And that is the thing about this track here in Montreal. It's very easy to go a little bit too wide, and of course it's a little bit like Monaco. Once you go wide slightly, there's a barrier there waiting.
And there was for James Boomy, who clipped it, and it was a case of a massive boat of oversteer on the exit from Ross McFarlane, who couldn't quite pick up an extra tenth or two. And again, it's uber aggressive from Boomy through that third chicane. He pulls the gap to half a second because McFarlane is not willing to attack it with that same level, with that same aggressiveness out there and into the hairpin once more. He can tuck it up underneath, but he'll need drive through the corners, and he won't get that drive by driving into the corner and getting up to the rear, because that prioritizes entry. That's good for making a move. It's not great for following.
No, it's certainly not. And I'm looking at the gap as well to Alexander Davidson. It's actually gone up now. Davidson losing a couple of seconds since the pit stop, so that is not good at all for him, and maybe shows he's not got that ultra pace that he needs here if he, in the second race, wants to compete with McFarlane and James Boomy, of course. The gap in the championship before this race was 3 points in Davidson's favour. He's now down to 4th with Boomy in the leaders. Here is Denis Grabowski looking to make a move as Guthrie goes ahead of Michael Docker, I think, has made a mistake.
Yeah, Docker is in a world of hurt, and I think that's him out then as he's gone through. So that will really hurt his prowess, as he knows that he's got to try and do everything he can. Final corner, he kept it out the wall of champions, but he did find the inside pit wall, which I guess is the wall of second place or third, or I don't quite know how it works. So for him, he knows he drops a number of places down the order, and that will drop him down to P8 just in front of Phil Samways. Great news for Ultra and Guthrie there on that one, but McFarlane's not giving this up, and again another whack at the wall there for James Boomy. He is starting to worry me right now with how close he's getting to these walls. We talk about you got to kiss them to be quick, but at the moment it's a case of kiss and tell.
I think he knows McFarlane's got some pace behind, and he's looking to get on the attack. And of course, he wants to just try and keep extending that gap in the championship as much as he possibly can. And he's over pushing the car, and hopefully he doesn't over push it a little bit too much as we head back into the final corner once again. 8.5 minutes to go in this race. Boomy leads ahead of McFarlane through the chicane, and you can see ever so close to the wall again for James Boomy, but still keeping that gap ahead of Ross McFarlane. But as we were saying earlier on as well, brilliant race by William Guthrie. That can help extend his lead to Michael Gray in the championship. And then for Ben Ultria, who is 43 points back from Daniel McCauley, who has a black flag, him sitting in P7 yet again, it's a big gift.
I am impressed with Taylor Lane today. A gain of 10 spaces so far in this one. Elliot Roberts up 11 is doing up 9 is doing a great job also out there to get this sorted. Paul Smith in the middle of a sandwich right now, and it will be a sandwich involving Joe Coppin up ahead. Now Arthur Thurtle, ahead of him. And here comes Adam Watson. So two very quick pros dive down the inside. I will have none of that, says Paul. I will look for a finish and try and make my gains in the second race.
Certainly. I suppose if you know you haven't got the pace of those who are trying to make moves, sometimes I wouldn't say let them through, but you know, don't fight too hard when they go for a move. And what's happened there to Ross McFarlane, that gap has gone up and over a second. It dipped back below a second, but for a moment was over a second, as he possibly made a mistake somewhere, which has given some more confidence in James Boomy. Now he doesn't have to push as much, given he's got a larger gap now to the car in second place, as they all head back in towards turn 1 here. Thurtle, Watson and Smith. And of course, Watson will be looking to make the move himself as well and go up into 24th place as they head back down towards turns 3 and 4. And then, of course, looking back in the top 10, I've noticed here, Docker's came under pressure from Phil Samways for 8th place.
Yeah, so if Docker's in a little bit of a sticky situation, we see these three here, because you got Tommy Fast on the back. Tommy Vettel looking to work himself then up to 9th after starting 16th, so he's there. I just think Ross McFarlane's missed an apex ever so slightly. That's just wound that away for James Boomy, and that pressure just lifts a little bit as they go. But on the straight, yeah, Docker is under pressure here, but Phil Samways nowhere near close enough to go and make that move. And with Michael Gray out of this one here today and pretty much his championship up in smoke, it's now up to Phil Samways to step up.
It certainly is, and Samways has shown lots of glimmers of pace this season, of course, taking multiple podiums in the past, 4 to his name out of the 16 races we've had so far. So definitely knows about being up in the top 3, and at the moment looking to take a P2 ahead of Vettel in net P3 for his class, but of course 10th overall. And I think this is one of the first races here we've actually seen 3 of our Pro-Ams and an AM up in the top 10 with the mix of our pros. A very, very close circuit for pace, it seems, because we never see many of our Pro-Ams and AMs this high up the field.
Yeah, and you're seeing how aggressive they have to go in that third chicane and work through. Samways with a good run, but one who needed to try and make something happen. Yes, Adam Watson also had himself one of those penalties for speeding on the lane. It's caught a lot out then over the course of this race, but down to 5.5 minutes left in this one. It's a lonely road for Alexander Davidson, and he'll know that he'll be quite happy with what he's managing at the moment. This 8th, 9th and 10th stays close, but at the moment there's no needle in it. You know, it's almost the meme of you get someone with a stick going, come on, do something.
Yeah, I think they're just quite happy where they are at the moment. It's still a top 10 for the 3 of them, so sometimes just staying put can get the job done. As here's Aidan Carter having a battle with Taylor Lane. This is for 14th place overall, about P6 in categories. Carter looks for a bit of a send in towards the chicane. I think was more of a dummy, but for a moment, would nearly was side by side into the corner. As we head back down towards turn 1, Carter's on the rear of Lane, looking to try and move to the left-hand side. That'll be the inside for turn number 1. And make a move in the Lamborghini, the only one in the field, a car that probably shouldn't be performing as well as it is. A brilliant job this season by Aidan Carter in that Lamborghini, still on the back of Taylor Lane, but there's no way through at all here as they head in towards turn 3 and 4. He's going to have to look for it, possibly down to the hairpin.
Well, the issue with the Lamborghini is it was turned around on the opening lap and it's found its way back to 15th, which I think is really impressive. This would be to get back to grid starting position for Aidan Carter, and a great recovery for him with outside shot to the Pro-Am Championship. Gets a good cut run on Taylor Lane. He has to leave the door open. He pinches down to the inside, but Aidan's going to keep his nose in. They fight on the brakes. They'll be side by side, but there's no turning left there for Taylor Lane. He had to wait there for Aidan Carter to put that Lamborghini where it needed to, and there that Lamborghini gets what it wants. Very precise in the cornering, and that's because the Lamborghini underneath it isn't Italian. It's owned by Audi. It's German.
Certainly a brilliant move there from Aidan Carter, up another spot into 14th, and I don't think we'll make much of a move on Denis Grabowski, but 14th here will be a great job considering he was down in the bottom 10 after that contact on lap 1. But of course, looking back at the lead, it's Boomy and McFarlane who lead with a 1.4 second gap, and then it's Anders Mira in third, 11.3 seconds away from the top spot. As what's happened there to Phil Samways, he's dropped down to 10th place below Tommy Bernal, and something else to keep an eye on, Davidson, who's within a second of Anders Mira.
So Anders has dropped 3 seconds, so he's made a mistake somewhere, has Anders. So that could be Alexander Davidson's reprieve late on in this race. The traffic not being that helpful for James Boomy, and so he stays at a 1.4 second margin here out front. And there will be 2 laps to go here in this one because they're doing 93 second lap times out there at the moment. Every corner is going to be scrutinised here between now and the end. He is pushing to try and give himself margin and leeway out there, but Alexander Davidson, he has that gap down under a second with 2 to go.
Certainly, and I'm not sure what's happened to Elliot Roberts, but I think he's retired. Is he retired from the race?
I'm not sure. It looks like, yeah, he's had a big off actually there. Turn 3 gets him out of 4 and then slides it into the wall in the middle of the road and decides the toe's going to be a better option for the World's Cooking Racing Adventures car. So that is going to be a tough one out there to navigate through, but every scrutinised place late is there. James Boomy with the margin, and Pirhanen loses the place. William Guthrie back into your top 5.
Certainly a brilliant move there from Guthrie up into 5th, and now has to fend off from Pirhanen behind, as well as they heading towards turn 6 and 7. And what a result this could be here for William Guthrie in his hopes of trying to take that Pro-Am Championship. He had a 56-point gap to Gray beforehand. Gray's had a bit of a stinker in this race, and Guthrie now with the top 5 overall and a big points gap now to Michael Gray could have one hand on that trophy heading into the final 2 rounds later on this month as Adam Hedgecock makes a move. But no, sorry, that's Elliot Roberts' car still in the pit lane. Of course, a big off for him. He's out of this one and definitely not been his best first race at all. And then looking up at the front, yet again, that gap between Davidson and Mira is coming down, but I don't think it'll be enough for him to make a move, as we have just 1 lap left in this one, and Guthrie fending off for 5th.
Well, William Guthrie did well to get that move. The Finn Matthias Pirhinen has driven a pretty stellar race, but for the moment, I think he's now biting the bullet and realising I need a car here and I need to save a little bit of fuel. Not a great run here by Guthrie, and Pirhinen now will pick up the move and say, look, I'm going to go through this time. Guthrie lets him have it as they work into turns 1 and 2. So on the final lap, critical pass made. 6/10 between Mira and Davidson. So Davidson is looking at some last gasp heroics if he wants the final spot on the podium. And still, you think about what could have been in a number of different scenarios. It's a dreamland scenario for Guthrie and for Altria. 6th and 7th Pro-Am and Am respectively, and that gap opening up then as they work through. And there's the looming spectre of Ben Altria just behind, who might want to pick something up, as it is confirmed now to be the final lap of this race, and every single apex left. There's not much for it here for William Guthrie as he goes, but they'll know they've got nothing left compared to this guy, who with a slowdown penalty had to be a little bit cheeky to get himself back through. The overcut played its hand perfectly. James Boomy realises now that this is tactically his advantage in the championship. Rounds himself out of the final corner. A big week for James as he wins it here at what is the Circuit Shield builder. McFarlane will take 2nd, and it's nose to tail for 3rd. Wall of champions for Alexander Davidson, 4th only.
Certainly a brilliant race there from Mira to finish 3rd, and here is William Guthrie taking the win for the Pro-Am Championship. A brilliant race, and now could put one hand onto that trophy.
Pirhinen's going to be running out here. It's going to be close, but he's just okay. Altria will take the AM category as they go through. So Matthias Pirhinen's blush is spared as he heads towards the line with some late battles. Phil Samways is going to lose out then to Tommy Vettel.
Indeed, and maybe that's why we saw Pirhinen lose that pace later on in this race. Maybe he was worried about that fuel running out. As here is Jacques Seaver in P19 currently, will be P4 in the AM category. McCauley will come home 2nd, Benjamin Gregory will come home in 3rd, and then Jacques Seaver will come home in 4th place as they all now make their way through the final corner to cross the line. I think that means here Jacques Seaver could close that gap down on Jesse Payne-Wilkins. I don't think it'll come down by much, but it will certainly come down by a few points in his advantage. And then, of course, at the top of the championship, Ben Altria, what a race it has been for him. He now will be so close to taking that championship lead.
He certainly will. The last few drivers then coming through. Paul Smith will be the last one here on leading lap. There's your results. James Boomy, 1.6 to the good over Ross McFarlane, with Anders Mira and Alexander Davidson 3rd and 4th, with William Guthrie in 5th, your winner in Pro-Am, ahead of Matthias Pirhinen, and your AM winner, Ben Altria, who takes massive points out of Dan McCauley here today, and James Boomy in control of the championship in Pro. Tommy Vettel behind Michael Evdoka and Phil Samways. In 11th, it is Dickie Simnor with Tom Griffiths in 12th. Then Skrabowski would recover all the way to 13th, ahead of Aidan Carter and Taylor Lane. There is Daniel McCauley in sweet 16th, with Benjamin Gregory and Jack Osborne 17th and 18th. Jacques Eva just behind in 19th, and Drew Fletcher for Series 1 Racing, a consummately quiet top 20 result for him. He'd finish ahead of Joe Coffin and Arthur Thurtle, with Ben Pennyworth, Adam Watts Wilson and Paul Smith, the last cars on the leading lap. Tough day for Altitude Esports by Sim Stickers, with Lee Berridge the first a lap down. Håkon Idle-Lindmo and John Roberts found themselves in that position. So too Jesse Payne-Wilkins and Adam Hedgecock, who found himself from pillar to post today, with Elliot Roberts 2 laps down and having to take a tow. Patrick Falconer having an interesting day of things. And then the big retiree, Michael Gray, which means Pro-Am pretty much is on a silver plate here for the likes of William Guthrie, Brian Loynes and Nathan Healy, finding out the dramas of today's running as we take a look at the reverse grid spinning wheel and what they will have to navigate through. And oh, say it's not so at a street circuit. Say it's not so. Oh, it's just gone over 17. It's one of the lowest you can get on a reverse, which means Ben Gregory will have himself where he needed to. Oh, Daniel, Nathan, if that was a perfect moment to go and say, right, that's how close it's going to be. Oh my goodness, that a full grid here would have just been an absolute Hail Mary up in the air.
I was hoping for that full grid. That would have been insane to see everybody swapped around and seen Boomy and Davidson from the back of the field try and make their way forward. But now the pole position and the top 2 goes to Gregory and Macaulay, who are, of course, well, Macaulay's more battling for the championship, but Gregory still wants to be battling for as high position as possible. So a big race for those two. And then, of course, this does give a big advantage to Denis Grabowski.
It absolutely does, who will be in a wonderful position to try and run back through the order. But you look at those who's maybe on the wrong side of it. I'm taking a look at Jack Osborne, for example. I think there are more drivers who can maybe have themselves in a position, say they're unlucky, like, for example, Jacques Seaver, Drew Fletcher. They need that reverse to make sure the AM category points can help them. That's the key. So if they're on the wrong side of the spinning wheel, they realise their championship, it's almost a slam dunk for them in the next race.
Certainly, and I think as well, seeing Aidan Carter up in the top 5 for the start, that could put him in a good position in trying to get second and jumping ahead of Michael Gray, and maybe does give him a chance for the championship. Just say Guthrie makes a couple of mistakes in the next couple of events, so Aidan Carter's got to try and take as much as he can in this next race. So it's great to see the top 5 or 6 there all actually kind of need a big result. So this could be a very, very interesting opening laps. They're all fighting to keep positions because they know once the pros start to come through, they're all going to fall down like what would the word be, like bowling pins.
They certainly would, and this isn't a case of having a mid-2000s graphic saying strike as you go on by. But I look at the Pro-Am category, I look at the Am categories. Big day for William Guthrie. He's got that one pretty much almost secured now, and that's huge for him and the way he's been running. But Ben Altria, my, did he need some luck there, and he got it in the form of a penalty for Dan Macaulay.
Yeah, certainly, and that really gives him a little bit of relief now, I think, in the championship. He'll be closing up on that lead if he can get a good result here. That could also put him into the lead, potentially heading into the next round, next time out. And then, of course, in the Pro Championship, Alexander Davidson will start from near the back of the top 15. Of course, for him, it's an interesting one because he seemed to have lacked a little bit of pace there in the last race, but also mistakes coming from looking to make moves. He's now got to make many of them if he wants to try and compete with James Boomy.
Yeah, he's got a lot to do, and so he'll know that he'll have a couple of places of advantage for the next race coming up. We're going to step aside for one moment here on RaceSpotTV, your World GT Championship not done for tonight, because we've got the reverse grid action in round 18 of the championship here in Montreal.
him as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the World GT Championship here from the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve. We say salut to Gilles and an island which hosted the rowing out there back in the Montreal Olympics. It was one of those Olympics where the stadium that they built all the way in the centre of Montreal hasn't even paid itself off yet, and it's still been, oh, I don't know, about 53 years now at this point since then. So this is going to be a place of great intensity, a place of sporting excellence year on year on year. And Nathan, this is where you got to be at your excellent reverse grid racing. We talk about this championship having a touring car lineage that has gone through it into GT spec, and now this is where the touring car comes out in GT style racing.
Certainly, of course, the car started at the bottom half of the top 15. Your likes of your James Boomies, McFarlane, Mira and Davidson. They've got to try and work their way forward ahead of cars that are in positions they normally aren't. So first of all, they're probably going to be a little bit slower heading into some of the braking zones and on the exits, but also they're fighting heavily to have the best position possible. So don't think just because they're a Pro-Am or they're an Am that they'll move out of the way. They certainly will not. So this is a big race for those, whether you're starting at the front or the back of that reverse grid.
Well, if that's not an omen, I don't know what is there. James Booming picking up a penalty here in practice for speeding, so that will certainly be no good to him out there at the moment. So he'll be trying to deal with that the best he can. But you use practice in different ways, and you look at the long shadows. This is what I'm loving now about iRacing, because this is what you see. This is a November in-sim date that you've got, and the shadows are long here, Nathan, and we've just passed 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, a very bright sun as well on track, which I don't know if that makes much of a difference for the driver's view, but I think if it was in real life, it certainly would. A very, very bright sun here around circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Of course, just over 3 minutes in practice to go, then we'll be back underway for our final race of the evening. Another 45-minute race where, of course, we saw the top 17 reversed. It's 2 of our Am category drivers starting in the top 2 with a couple of Pro-Ams in the mix, and then down to 17th, it's most of our Pro drivers who will be looking to make their way forward. And I suppose if you're the cars that are finishing 18th and 19th, that must be such a shame and a horrible feeling to know that you're one place away from getting pole position.
Yeah, and so if you're just that place away, that's sometimes how Lady Luck wants to put itself into play. But this is going to be tough, gaining those places, because unlike other circuits which you've got all the space in the world and those drivers who are pros can bully drivers out of the way, here, if you bully someone off the line, you're causing a 20-car accident behind you. You can't afford to do that. You can't afford to be caught up in that. So they're going to tiptoe a little bit more, and I think there's actually more chance of a runaway leader.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that's the thing as well. Boomy and Davidson, who want to make moves quickly, can't just barge each other's off, and I think Another thing as well we see is on tracks like which are more open, drivers can go for the risks, knowing if they go for a move and they can't quite cut it out, they can go wide and rejoin. Here you really can't. You either rejoin into grass and spin, or you rejoin, or you go off and hit a barrier. So you've got to be a little bit more careful and pick your overtakes a little bit more without risk. Of course, turn 10, the hairpin, is going to be a big spot, I think, for those making their way forward. Apart from that, there's not really that many big opportunities to make a move. The chicanes tend to be kind of written off in terms of making overtakes because they are difficult to pull alongside and pull ahead. And then, of course, with that thing of if you have more incident points, you can lose points. For Boomy and Davidson, they want to do anything they can to not lose any.
Well, if they can find themselves with something to say, look, I don't want to lose my point, this is going to be the race where you have to just find the way to go and keep out of trouble. With just a minute and a half left in practice, this is the last chance for drivers to assess what they want, try and get a feel for these conditions and say, well, is my car working the way I want to? Can I make any last-minute adjustments?
I suppose I've got to look into that, because setups, you know, I don't really know the in-depthness of them in this game because they are difficult to work out. And I suppose sometimes when you've got teams such as, you know, WSR with Davidson and McFarlane, chances are they're on a very similar setup, and they were both driving very, very similarly. Not, you know, too high on the curbs, very, you know, quite away from the walls. Whereas Boomy, on his setup, whichever adjustments he has, he was a lot more over the curbs, a lot more risking towards the wall. So sometimes you can kind of see throughout many drivers which way a team has gone in terms of setup. So just say Boomy or, you know, Davidson wasn't happy, potentially they could make a little change here and there. But the risk with that is you look at what happened to Red Bull in the real life F1 Grand Prix, where you make a change and it fails pretty much.
Absolutely, they can change tyre pressures. They've got some look to go through with the brakes, so they can deal with the toe, they can deal with the spring rates, the bump gaps. You've got the cambers that go in, you've got the likes there of corner weights you can deal with, and then of course on top of that they can deal with the gear ratios and the damping as well. So a lot to deal with. They have traction control settings here, they've got ABS settings, they can adjust the brake pressure bias as well as they go through, and even their throttle shape if they should choose to do so. Checkered flag out in practice, and another 45 minutes to decide some all-important points as the grid is soon to set itself ready, and we'll get a run through of where everyone will stack. And as we know, it's a couple of AMs who will be up on the front row, the 113 of Benjamin Gregory and Daniel McCauley, the AM Championship leader, alongside a reprieve for him. Taylor Lane and Aidan Carter will be third and fourth, with Dennis Grabowski fifth, the leading pro, and Tom Griffiths in sixth. You've then got Dickie Simnor and Phil Samways, with Tommy Vettel ninth and Michael Evdocker in 10th place. Ben Altria will go from 11th, 9 places behind his nearest rival, 12th there belonging to Matthias Pirhinen. It's then William Guthrie and Alexander Davidson, with Anders Mira and Ross McFarlane behind that. James Boomy with it to do in 17th. Jack Osborne missing the break there in 18th. It's then Jacques Eva, Andrew Fletcher, with Joe Coffin and Arthur Thurtle looking to make progress through the field. Ben Bennyworth 23rd. Adam Watson again needs another recovery style race. The penalty put him to 24th in that first race, with Paul Smith and Lee Berridge row 13. Håkon Idle Lindmo and John Roberts there in 28th, with Jesse Payne Wilkins and Adam Hedgecock making the 30, just the 33 in this second race, with Patrick Falconer, Michael Gray and Brian Loynd making up everybody as they are already rolling here towards the Lepangle hairpin. And in these evening conditions, the shadows will grow longer and the chances will be fruitful for many to go and make it happen. But Nathan, I ask you this one and say, what can you do? You might get stuck behind a driver that wants to fight for every position possible, and around here you talk about most places it's half a second. Here you need at least a second and a half.
Yes, definitely. I think the first lap you need to keep it quite conservative. You can't be throwing this up the inside when they've got cold tyres and drivers are trying to get used to those conditions on track. I think a driver here which has a very good chance of looking to potentially run away with it is Dennis Grabowski, a driver we know has good pace. There's a big position gap down to Davidson, Mira, McFarlane and Boomy. There's about 10 positions between them. Grabowski, if he can get past those four ahead of him quickly, he has a very big chance of looking to potentially take a win here this evening. But of course, Gregory and Macaulay are not going to mess around.
They're not. Benjamin Gregory has control of the field, and he will go at his discretion as they run through too wide through that chicane. Form up, and there's the launch. 45 minutes back on the clock. The green flag in the air, and we're underway. Macaulay looking for launch then as they run through. Good run by Aidan Carter there on the outside. He looks like he's going to steal P3 away as they look to funnel in for the first time. Davidson has to check up on the brakes a little bit as they work through this one. A lot clean there as they work themselves through. And now for that next section, and dive in. Taylor Lane loses out. Grabowski now up to fourth.
Certainly, and Boomy is well ahead of Mira. Those two still battling side by side for position as Pihonen up into P11 ahead of Benaltria. Of course, key to watch for Davidson, McFarlane, Mira and Boomy is Phil Samways up into 7th, fighting with Tom Griffiths. Side by side through turn 6 and 7 as they head back down towards turn 8 and 9. Somebody's got to back out here, otherwise it could be 2 cars off into the barrier.
It's very much a case of hold your nerve, and Gregory does against Dan Macaulay at the front. Aidan Carter tries to figure out where to go. It's the outside. He's going to choose Samways through on Tom Griffiths now as they line up behind him. Docker, Vettel and Davidson, and Piernan defending like nobody's business as well down into Lepangle. Off the exit, Macaulay fighting hard with Aidan Carter as they go through. It is rush hour in Montreal.
Brilliant move there by Aidan Carter, but never mind, Macaulay's still side by side. This is close. There was a slight bit of contact on the straight between those two. And who's going to keep ahead, heading in towards the far chicane? Macaulay's got the inside line. Carter's going to try and hang it around, but has to back out. Can't quite keep it side by side through there. So Macaulay back into second, Carter third. Grabowski is looking to close in as well for fourth. And Alexander Davidson already up to P9. A brilliant shot from here. Who's that? I think that's Watson.
It is Adam Watson who's gone for a big smash-up there going through at the Wall of Champions, and that will pretty much put pay dirt to any hopes that he has of having a good week's worth of racing here today. With 3 rounds to go in 3 weeks, or 5 races left in this championship, you've got to be on best behaviour. Dan Macaulay trying to work around the outside of Benjamin Gregory, but Aston Martin stays planted in the middle of the road. It's so good here for the tight and twisty sections. Now they all cover off, they all funnel to the inside. Macaulay is desperate. He's like a kid in the candy shop tugging on his mum saying, come on, can I have the entire store?
And who's that around? Ross McFarlane's gone round. Ross McFarlane has fell down the field after making, I presume, a mistake. And he drops all the way down to the back of the field. 32nd for him as here is Daniel Macaulay looking to make the move. Can't quite do so. Up the inside goes Aidan Carter. Those two came close to contact there before. And this time around, Macaulay keeps ahead. And Benjamin Gregory, he's having to perform the best defence of his life to keep Macaulay and Carter behind.
Oh, to the inside with 2 tyres, and it's shut by Ben Gregory there. Was not going to have the Hunter Ray line to try and make that work. Back on the brakes they go. It is a huge bottleneck now at the front. McFarlane's spin was all on his own accord. Nothing you can do about that. Cold tyres, opening couple of laps, and he just ran a little wide, over-rotated. There comes Macaulay down the inside, and he'll take both of them out of contention there with that one. A block pass, and thank you very much, says Aidan Carter.
Yep, there was contact there between those two. I don't think Gregory saw Macaulay there, but Macaulay was and made the move, and in towards turn 4 we go. That's Grabowski making a move ahead of Gregory, very close to contact. On the outside is Taylor Lane. There's somebody behind. Samways, I think, was into the barriers. It's 3 wide, heading into turn 6 and 7.
Gregory loses 4 places then in that one as through goes Simnor and Lane and Grabowski all taking places, and round goes Gregory.
Oh, what a shame there for Benjamin Gregory. One mistake into turn 1 has funneled into him dropping down to the rear of the field. Pretty much that's contact against 2 cars into Gregory. There's 4 or 5 involved on the back straight down towards turns 8 and 9. Dear me, there's at least 5 cars involved in that one.
Michael Gray got caught up in it, and so that is a double slam dunk for championship aspirations. Ross McFarlane's championship hopes done and dusted here on the streets on the St. Lawrence River. This has been a tough race, and I would say this has been the week that has separated the wheat from the chaff.
Certainly, and of course, look at the run now that Carter and McCauley have over Grabowski, around 2 seconds. They have to third place as here's Alexander Davidson with a brilliant start here, looking to get ahead of Richard Simnor. Down towards turn 1 they go. He's got to, I think, pull to the outside here to make the move around the outside into turn 1. Never mind, he pulls to the inside, tries to get the position. He goes up the inside. A brilliant move there for Davidson, up into the top 5, whereas James Boomy just making his way into the top 10.
I think they might have tagged rear wings there. Alexander Davidson there, buzzing the tower to Dickie Simnor and saying, what can you do? So there's a lot to get through. Look at that check up there. Watson just ends up, ran over there at the final chicane. So easily done. Here's McFarlane's spin. Look, he just drops it. It's cold tyres in the Mustang.
Yeah, and then we saw that from Gregory, and then the 2 cars after who made contact there, as this was what happened through turns 3 and 4. There was 7 ways around, and then of course it just caused pandemonium heading out of the 6 and 7 chicane, as it was nicer there for some ways to wait for everyone to go through. Gregory, how's he lost it there? He wasn't even up the wall. He was pretty much in the middle of the track, lost it, and then 2 cars come colliding into him in around 3 seconds. Contact and bosh.
Oh, it's the most horrible feeling there, and there's going to be contact with James Boomy at the moment. He's had Tommy Vettel on his front nose, so they've come together trying to deal with what they need to, and it was a case of being slightly wide by Vettel, nowhere to go, and Altria, who was on the back of it, realises, okay, I could have had that one, but I'm going to decide against it here. So here's a look down on the brakes. So they checked up initially, wide went Tommy fast, and then ultimately Boomy tries to barge his way through. Speaking of which, Grabowski, slow down penalty.
Certainly, and drops down there to P6. Could even be P7 as Evdoka goes through. Mira can't quite get close enough to go ahead there of Grabowski. Is now Boomy looks to go for the move again, but Vedal keeps himself ahead. This battle between those two is getting more and more interesting, and Vettel still keeping ahead in 9th place. Boomy in the top 10, Davidson up to 3rd, and this is the result he needs after a very poor, in his standards, race. One he'd love to go back into the 2nd race and take a top spot here, as we do see Drew Fletcher dropping down a couple of spots, as I think that is Fletcher, isn't it, around down at the exit of turn 3 and 4.
Yeah, front clip there off and completely destroyed Carly Berridge as well with a very second-hand machine. It's going to need to come in because the black and orange mechanical flag is out there for him on track. Tough in terms of this one. Mira sat on the back of Grabowski with Evdoka, Simnor and Lane in front here in this one. Davidson double digits up, plus 11. The only other driver to do that at the moment, Patrick Faulkner and Brian Lloyds.
Certainly, as we continue on, and of course just looking at the position gain, 11 up for Davidson already, brilliant from him, 7 for Mira and Boomy, and 1 loss for Taylor Lane, but still up in the top 4. Certainly won't be disappointed with that one as we head into the chicane once again. All the cars making their way through. Of course, Simnor closing in on Taylor Lane, but then we have Grabowski and Evdoka fighting for position as well. And give it time, I'm sure we'll see Boomy and Mira make their way into that battle. So they head down towards turn 1, but nobody there looking to make a move as they go through. And Boomy looking to get back ahead of Tommy Vettel.
Oh, he's not going to get it. Vettel just absolutely pinned it back at turn 2 and stuck one to the now championship leader. James Boomy is getting no respect out there. He muscled him out at turn 1, and Tommy came back and said, you don't do that to me, here I come.
And this has been a brilliant battle between these two for 9th and 10th, and realistically Boomy should have been ahead of Vettel a long time ago as he went up the inside. Vettel's had to keep it pinned in through the corner. Oh, it was a bit of contact between the two of them, and Vettel got back ahead, but of course it was contact earlier on when Boomy was trying to make the move. So these two constantly into contact, as I think Boomy's got the move done. Yes, he has, up into 9th place, but the gap between himself and Davidson was around 3 seconds earlier on. It's now up to 7. Boomy's lost so much time trying to defend.
Oh my! That was a little bit ambitious, and he'll pay the price of Guthrie and almost Jack Osborne trying to find his way back. Altria is there behind it too. That was a scary moment on the brakes. Amazing heads-up driving by James Boomy. He looked in the mirror, saw that car approaching, that BMW, and just opened out the steering to say, look, I am not going to let this be the end of my race.
I think that was a little bit personal there between those two. I think Vedder was quite annoyed he got the move taken away, so we thought, right, I'm going to go for a massive send and try and scare Boomy and go back ahead. Well, that has cost him a couple of positions, as through on Vedder as well was William Guthrie, who now moves up to 4th in his class. Of course, he's the championship leader. Doesn't have to worry about Carter Lane or Simnor, but of course we'll have to worry about Michael Gray, whose race has already pretty much ended. I think, yes, he has retired. What a shame for Michael Gray. Went into this with some decent pace and comes home with 2 DNFs.
Yeah, that's what we call the old 00, and nobody wants to end up with that. Group continues here, 4th place on back as we focus with Dicky Simnor in 5th and Doka Grabowski Mira all there in this pack and trying to work through in these ice-cold track conditions that they're dealing with at the moment. There's no threat of rain here in these 45 minutes, but what they do note as well, Dan McCauley is actually pulling away from Aiden Carter. So, 9/10 of a second, the gap at the front of the field. Lane and Simnor find themselves close together, and now as they sit, Doka wants to put himself into the party as they work through. Taylor's pace is very much there. He is putting his car, his Nomad machine, in all the right places. The AMG Mercedes will work well, but again, the race has settled out over the first 15 minutes. It will give these drivers a chance now to work their line in what they need to do. Lane a little bit wide there through turn 2, but again, it's enough to cover off any attempts to 3 and 4. It's a short shoot run. I think we may have just lost Nathan here for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, but we still got some great racing here on the horizon as they jam on the brakes and work themselves here through this next section. And now they're trying to figure out, right, where do I need to go? Looking around under the GoDaddy.com sponsorship sign, and then towards that 3rd chicane there of turn numbers 8 and 9. Out there on track, working hard through the corner, and everyone just happy to be patient at this moment. You're not going to win a race in this place, but you know that you can just hold your line steady. You know that there are places to be had. You've just got to find the opening opportunity that opens things up. And Nathan, I think you now sit and see a group of 5 that aren't willing to really throw hands at this stage of the race. They know there's a pit stop.
Yeah, certainly, and of course that does help the likes of Aiden Carter and Daniel McCauley up at the front. Of course, I think it's inevitable that Davidson will get the move ahead, but at least those two have the chance of a podium, have the chance of taking the top 5, because Taylor, Lane and those behind are all stuck in that train together, and it's a big, big shame for James Boomies. I think Lane there got a slow down penalty, drops into 8th, drops down to 9th, could even be under pressure here from William Guthrie.
That's a big hit back for Taylor Lane. He knows how critical it is to get a good run. It was the first part of the chicane again that bite, and so he will realise by being too aggressive with that line, he will pay the price of dropping a bundle of positions out there, and he will have to scrap with the Pro-Am Championship leader, and that would be for 4th in, or actually, sorry, for 3rd in Pro-Am, that battle which is going on. But at least right now, it is all about this group that sits itself in. Side by side it is behind between Lane and Guthrie now for position. Guthrie will have the inside as they now work themselves under the bridge, which is the entrance to the island. And then on the outside, oh, William Guthrie, that is so cheeky there to give just a car win.
Certainly, and a brilliant move as well, up into 9th now for William Guthrie. Of course, I was going to say I don't think he'll contend with those ahead, but because they're all stuck in a train, that could help him catch up and go up into potentially 8th place, or at least contend with those up in the top 8. As Ben Altria making a move ahead of Matthias Bihonen up into 13th. Very good race from him. Of course, he's in that battle with Dan McCauley for the championship, and with a decent gap ahead of the top 5 here, McCauley could be on for a very, very good result, and that is the last thing that Ben Altria would need, as Anders Mira goes ahead of Grabowski, who drops down to 8th.
Slow down.
Just making a mistake on the way in.
Yeah, he just overcooked it on the way in, took too much of the out of the curves, and then had to get out of line to serve the penalty, and they've been very diligent about it. Here comes a little searching party from Arthur Thurtle in 17, trying to get by Joe Coffin and Tom Griffiths. No real room at the end there for a move like that at turns 1 and 2. And I do want to go up to second as well, because Aiden Carter here has been caught by Alexander Davidson, but by no means at the quick pace that we were expecting.
Certainly, as we head our way into turn 6 and 7 again, and well, back to the front. At turns 8 and 9, it's Carter and Davidson here battling for second place, and I don't think it'll be a heavy defence here from Carter, because he could spend a lot of time trying to defend from Davidson. He might just kind of let him slip on by, and then just try and follow in the mirrors of him, and just try and keep that third spot and not lose time to Simnor down in P4 as we head our way back down towards the final chicane again. The gap a couple of tenths between Carter and Davidson. We have an AM, a Pro-Am and a Pro all in the top 3 currently. That's brilliant scenes to see as Davidson goes to the inside, darts late onto the brakes and has to back out, and I think was more looking to scare through there. I think he has a tap on the wall.
He does, he has 2. He taps the tyres first, and then he gets the tougher concrete stuff as he goes through that section, and it's very unforgiving when you hit that. You've got to be careful about any steering type of damage, less so when it comes to a GT spec, especially that Mustang. That thing's built like a brick, but ultimately it's a case that you look around at Aiden Carter there, and you can't just go searching willy-nilly for a line. You have to be patient and let the opportunity come to you, and that's what you have to respect about Carter and Macaulay in the way this race has gone.
Certainly, and of course Davidson looking just to try and fight back into second. He's closing in, but I think also knows because of the gap he's got back to fourth, he can also take a little bit of time in trying to get ahead and not worry about going for a last, a late break move into one of the chicanes, as we do see here Simnor ahead of Evdoka, Mira, Boomy all there as well in that battle for fourth. And then of course there's a couple of seconds back to Grabowski, who's got William Guthrie on his tail for 8th place, and then of course the gaps increase further and further behind. But a brilliant job here from Macaulay and Carter so far to keep Davidson behind, who's right on the tail now of the Lamborghini, could possibly be looking for a move.
Well, if he's got the run here, and it looks like he does on the Lamborghini's legs, that Mustang will now move to the inside. Aiden Carter early on the lift to make sure that the move can be facilitated through the corner. And again, a double tap for Alexander Davidson off of the Wall of Champions. Twice now, 3 times, and you're starting to summon Betelgeuse or something like that on the brakes into 1 and 2, and it is clearance then for Alexander Davidson as he will hunt the AM Championship leader, Dan Macaulay, for the race lead. James Boomy sends one up the inside and gets it done on Anders Mira.
Certainly a brilliant move there by James Boomy, up into 6th place on the back of Michael Evdoka and Richard Simnor now. So Boomy's got a good chance to get back up into 4th place, but of course Davidson in 2nd and probably in a very good position to go for a win here. Yet again, that brings that gap between them both down again. So it's been just a topsy-turvy event here between these two. Of course, one race, Boomy's got the advantage. In the other race, Davidson now holds an advantage, and that was because he got those moves done early, because he shot up the field within the first couple of laps. He got past some of the hard-to-pass cars, whereas Boomy was stuck behind them a lot longer, and now he's stuck in a battle with Evdoka and Simnor, who, respect to them, aren't as quick as those up at the front of the field currently.
Taylor Lane is out of the race. He has gone into the barriers somewhere, and that will be his day written off. So another retirement to add to the books as Matthias Pierhonen jumps by Tommy Vettel into the top 10. So a lot to still uncover. Evdoka has found that Dickie Simnor has been a tricky customer to try and slip on by, but at the moment, look, again, he's just got it scouted. Oh, no, there goes Evdoka. Around he goes. Tiny tag there with the likes of James Boomy. What heads-up driving again by him to avoid that one. They look like a slam dunk.
Certainly a big shame there for Evdoka. Mira losing out, and Guthrie moving up into 7th place. Once again, capitalising off mistakes. Up into 7th, a brilliant drive from him. He's now got Grabowski ahead of him, who's only a couple of tenths ahead, so potentially P6 could be on the cards for William Guthrie if he can make that move when he needs to, as this is a replay into the final corner, all on his own there for Evdoka, and somehow Mira, I think he made a slight tap, but he did a good job in overall in getting around it and not losing that much time. As on the replay, how close was that there for Anders Mira?
How does James Boomy avoid that? How does he avoid it? It is beyond belief how early he recognised that Evdoka's going around, that he's taken too much curve, that he was able to jam on the brakes, that the car didn't move, and he still got to the inside without being ran over by someone else. Absolutely incredible. And if James Boomy was a cat out there, Nathan, he'd lost about 8 lives in that incident alone.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't want to give him one left. He's still got 24 minutes to go. I think that's going to give him quite a lot of risk here. But no, brilliant job from James Boomy. Of course, he's going to, I'd assume, closing quite quickly to the back of Richard Simnor. And then his battle will be get ahead of the 442 car and then focus on bringing that 9-second gap down to Carter. But I think third or possibly second's possible. But I think Davidson's a little bit too high up the road. If Boomy was a second quicker than Davidson, fair enough, but there's probably maybe a couple of tenths in it between the two. Davidson's got to have a bit of a stinker now in the next 24 minutes to lose that chance of a lead.
I want to point something out here on how great Dan McCauley's driving at the front. Last lap, Alex Davidson took 2/100ths of a second out of him. 2/100ths, and that's an amp.
Yeah, but I mean, the pace in this race has been insane from every classification. I think this is the closest, at least from what I've seen, where the pros, the pro-ams and the AMs all have very similar pace. In many races, Davidson would have probably been past McCauley 10 minutes ago, but he's not, because McCauley's got some brilliant pace around a very difficult circuit. Davidson's going to have to work a lot harder to get himself up into that top spot. So it's been a brilliant weekend here where we get to see everybody actually have a chance at fighting in the top 10 if they put themselves there. So to our pro-ams and to Daniel McCauley, you can only give them a pat on the back here.
You absolutely can. Grabowski now in rear gunner position with William Guthrie, so that gives James Boomy the chance to attack Dickie Simnor for position. They work themselves into that chicane once again. The drive needed off of the exit here towards turn number 1. They'll cross the line for their 15th lap started here in this one, and surely the search party is there at 1. Oh, and Simnor gives him wide berth through the opening corner, covers it off on the exit of 2. It was a little deep there from Boomy, but that's the nature of turn 1 and 2. You can chuck it up the inside of turn 1. You know that at turn 2, the corner comes straight back, so effectively you can just stand yourself on the brakes on the apex and it's covered.
Certainly, and I think Simnor would rather let Boomy through to lose less time, as here goes Grabowski up the inside of Simnor into towards 6th and 7, gets that move done and into 4th, as John Roberts further in the field has been given a black flag, so that's probably his race pretty much over as now. William Guthrie looking for the move.
Yeah, John Roberts is down in the pits, so by the looks of things, him and Jesse Payne-Wilkins have come in for a stop, and they have been caught speeding on the gun. Not Jesse Payne-Wilkins, but John Roberts caught speeding on the gun. So strategy now opening up, and it's going to be a very quick window, I think, for a number of drivers. And this might be a case of how late can you pull it out. If you've been sat in a group like a number of those drivers have, they might have a chance to take less fuel at the stop.
Certainly, as we continue on once again, and of course we're going to start to see some of our leaders, some of our top 10 head into that pit lane and make their one and hopefully only stops of this race. Of course, just following through here with the 4th and below. Of course, Boomy leads that one. Grabowski around a second back, with Guthrie, Simnor, Mira, Evdoka and Pihonen as well, looking to close into this battle as well and maybe have a fight for the top 9 or top 8 as we head back onto the brakes into turn 1. And Mira's not going to be that far away from making a move and jumping up ahead of Richard Simnor, who's since got overtaken by Boomy. He's just lost a lot of place. Is that another black flag there for John Roberts?
So he got one on the entry, he's got one on the exit as well.
Oh dear me, not been a good race at all for John Roberts. I think if I was him, I would have probably thought, right, that's it, back into the pits again and end my race.
I think somebody down at that pit stop must have put a little sticky label over his speedometer and he's put it just one notch too many, and so that's why he's getting it a little bit concerned. Speaking of concerns, I look at that race lead gap at half a second here, Macaulay versus Davidson. This has been a wonderful stint out in front, 25 minutes for an AM to lead in a race with a reverse grid. Alexander Davidson has found his spot and he knows that he can sit there, he can camp, he can try and find the place to go and make this move. A battle of brakes it may have to be into the chicane, and they are both going to continue another lap along, but Macaulay gets a beautiful run there through that final chicane and doesn't have to worry about Davidson's advances.
Certainly, and I think the thing here for Macaulay is if he can get a decent exit, his entries don't really matter that much, or his big corner speed. If he can just pull away from Davidson on the exit, he's got a very good chance of keeping ahead as Dockers into the pit lane. From 8th place, Mira and Pierre Hoden go ahead up into the top 9. And of course, Evdoka the first to bite there, as Anders Mira does go ahead. Now Richard Simnor into 7th place for him, and into the top 10 goes Jack Osborne, who's, I think, been in 11th for a long time, but we haven't seen much of him. He's had a very good start, I think, from down in 18th or 19th. He's now got himself a chance of possibly being top 5 for the Pro-Am category.
Now, John, you're back in the pits again. Please don't speed, whatever you do. So he's going to come down through and get himself through the line and back out again, as the likes of Patrick Falconer also 16 seconds down there in for that stop. Benjamin Gregory, after the big spin, is down in the pits. But again, into Lapangle here, turn 10, and off of the exit now to the Droit du Casino. And this is the run through. Grabowski losing a place now. William Guthrie gets it, and that's coming out of the third chicane.
Certainly, and I'm just keeping an eye here on the lap times, and I think pretty much Boomy needs around half a second a lap if he wants to try and get ahead of Macaulay. I think Davidson is out of the question, but Macaulay could still be potentially a possibility. And lap time wise, there's not much in it between Macaulay and Boomy, as Macaulay is in the pit lane. Davidson takes the lead of the race, and now Macaulay and Carter look to call things early, get their pit stop done, and then see what they can do once we see Davidson enter the pit lane shortly. But I think now Davidson's going to take this next couple of laps as quick as he can, so he can try and overcut Macaulay, because the last thing he needs now is Macaulay back ahead of him after that pit stop phase.
Aidan Carter in, William Guthrie as well makes the call for the lane. Ben Altria and Joe Coffin, Tom Griffiths as well, decide they want to go in. Out goes Dan Macaulay now. Keep an eye on that time he had in his stop, as he will look to get himself out and clear just ahead of Adam Watson, who, remember, has had himself a lap down, having to serve the damage that he's needed. So Dan Macaulay can now really start hunting. Alexander Davidson knows this is the moment for his race, and you'd argue at this point this is the moment, the knife edge moment, that he wants for this championship. So as they look to sit and say, what more can you find? It's going to be tough out there for many to get what they need, but the longer you go, the colder this track is, the more you need. Pirhinen and Simnor switching places up there as they battle side by side off the exit. In comes Alexander Davidson now, and I'd expect everyone to jump in, and that will include the likes of Boomy and Grabowski and Mira. They should all be due now.
Certainly. Sorry about that one, Jake. I had a bit of a choke on water there when we was watching the battles go on, but I'm back, and of course now our top 6 all in the pit lane together, and now we'll see whereabouts Macaulay comes out in this one. He should pop out at least second here, but of course it depends how Davidson's pit stop goes. He spent 14.5 stops there as it continues on. This is going to be close here.
It is, and this is going to be the scrap off the exit. There's Dan Macaulay, but he's going to be behind. He's going to be behind by a bit, by a fair bit. Look at that. That's about 2 seconds. He's found himself dropped, and looking at James Boomy, he's going to come out here side by side with Aidan Carter. Carter's up to speed. He just gets the clearance there on James, and James now knows he's going to be in with a scrap here against the Lamborghini Pro-Am.
What a recovery, I suppose, there from Carter. At 1 minute, it looked like Boomy was going to get ahead, but a brilliant defence there, and Carter stays in third. Macaulay, further up the field, is in second place, and of course has a decent gap back to Carter and Boomy. So realistically, I mean, you know, Macaulay's hoping that Carter stays there in third as long as possible, as they just pass a lapped car as they make their way in towards 8 and 9. And then they've got a decent 3-second gap back to Grabowski. And as Mira's lost a lot of time there in the pits as well, he's a couple of seconds back from car 41. And then William Guthrie, still in the top 7, of course, looking to try and take, once again, another top 10 here this evening.
And it depends on how well you save fuel in that opening stint. They've only got 15 minutes left, and if they are between clicks in terms of their numbers on the fuel count, they'll be thinking, right, it's a case between do I make it or do I not? And now Carter will look about and sees a slight defence, and James Boomy's going to throw at it anyway. Chucks it down the inside. Aiden Carter, nothing for it. Good move. And so the pass made for James Boomy, and that puts him into third with now what is 6.5 seconds to chase down here to the likes of Dan Macaulay if he wants to minimise damage by Davidson.
Certainly, and that was a risky move there by Boomy, but at one point you have to go for the move and you have to try and get that position. And into third goes Boomy, of course, keeping an eye now on these lap times compared to Macaulay's. There's around a couple of tenths in it, I think, both of them with decent fastest laps each. Boomy's fastest lap around 4 tenths ahead of Macaulay's, but then of course it's about that consistent pace. You know, what sort of lap times can they produce lap after lap is the question, as they make their way out to turn 4 and 5 in towards the chicane now 8 and 9. Carter is keeping with Boomy. I don't think he's going to have any chance of attacking, but of course the longer he keeps with him, he gets that extra little bit of slipstream to keep it ahead and keep that gap high to Grabowski.
It's not Grabowski that's the worry though for him, it's William Guthrie that is, who is 3 places behind, so he'll gain a minor amount of points, but he'll love a little bit more than that, as just behind Anders Mira here is William Guthrie, and these two are going to have to work hard here to get together. It's starting to form packs of 2 with Pirhanen and Evdoka, for example. Simnor's been dispatched off the back of that, and then Grabowski then trying to get back to Carter and Boomy. He's got John Roberts to try and get by, but it's that sort of style that you've got to look at. It's who's your friends, who's around you, what are you going to be able to avoid, what are you going to be able to gain, and sometimes you need a partner to go and work with, and if it takes 2 to tango, right now it's a case of a foxtrot up to the next car in front.
It certainly is, and of course look at that gap further ahead. It's still relatively similar between Macaulay and Boomy, and that gap as well isn't really going up between Davidson and Macaulay, so his pace is actually very, very strong. Last lap around, Boomy was only 2 tenths quicker than Daniel Macaulay, so if it stays like that, there's no chance of Boomy catching up for second place. He needs that to be coming down at least half a second a lap here, because you've got to catch up, but then you've got to spend a couple of laps trying to make the move. And from what we saw from Carter and many others so far this evening, it's not, you know, for Common to defend, they will, and it's not easy at all to make the move. So Boomy's got to catch up and then give himself 3 or 4 laps to make the move.
And if James Boomy doesn't reach, the question will now be asked of Dan Macaulay next season. He is surely going to be a slam dunk pick to go up to promote to Pro-Am.
Yeah. Sure, well, I think that's a given already. He's been insane in the races he's driven in so far. I mean, he would be, I think, overall P2 in the Pro-Am Championship.
It's that sort of drive, isn't it, from Dan Macaulay? He's had such a wonderful season here. It defies belief. Ben Ultra is his nearest Am challenger, and he is all the way down in P12 at the moment, fighting Arthur Thurtle.
I mean, I can make it sound even more insane and say that he will be P9 in the Pro Championship.
Yikes. That is a very good season out there as they go. And Anders Mira then looks like he's going to drop 1. He's going to drop 2 as he's got a penalty. So Pirhanen jumps through. Oh, it's a huge penalty for Mira. 3. Evdoka dives by.
And we'll have to see if Simnor can catch up potentially. I think he's got back going, but Simnor on the back of him as they head in towards turn 1, as he is Benoltria, along with Arthur Thurtle. Of course, Thurtle had a decent start in the first race, but unfortunately got tangled on the exit of turn 6 and 7 and ended his race there, and then he had to work his way through the field, and now Sits just inside the top 20. It's been a decent recovery, but of course we would have expected him realistically to be up in that top 10 comfortably.
Yeah, you would, but at least right now it's a case of can I go and gain what I can for those final points when they've got the Ultrastromer Hermanos Rodriguez in 1 week, and then that season finale, which of course the big difference of that season finale, you can't drop the final rounds of the season, even though you've got 2 drop rounds for the course of it. So it means that those final 2 results, they matter even more than all the results put in the season combined.
Yep, they certainly do. So you've got to make sure that you're on it for those final couple of races. And sometimes, for many drivers, that can actually be a positive because they know if they can perform well anyway, they're fine under pressure. But for some drivers, once they know there's no way out of it and they can't drop it if they need to, that can put on to them some unneeded pressure and sometimes can make them crumble.
It certainly can. Down under 10 minutes left here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve on what has been an IMSA-style race that we have had here today, in which everything is close quarters combat only out there, and there have been some good place battles throughout this field as they have been working this one. Anders Mira then remaining stoic and close to Michael Evdoka, but Evdoka here in the 989 will be looking around and seeing that he is just starting to lose contact with Matthias Pirhinen. That's dragging him back into the clutches of the BMW.
Certainly, and I'm just looking here to see if you've ever had a Pro-Am or an Am on the podium, and I don't think we have all season long. This will be the first time anybody bar a Pro is going to be on the podium, and that surely could give some confidence to Dan McCauley, but also next season he's going to have a much harder job if he's going to be in a higher category, because this season he has pretty much ran away with it. He and Ben Ultria have been a level above everybody else. I mean, they're around 200 points ahead of third in their category.
It goes to show you any other season, and that would be Ben Ultria's, and Daniel McCauley has just come along and gone, "Yoink, that's mine, and I will not let you have it." But Mira close still, running in towards that final chicane, and Evdoka bounces over the inside curb there, really clatters it. He's been bitten once already by it, and it does give a unique way of trying to set up the car, knowing that you've got to have enough right height clearance for that final chicane.
Yeah, certainly. That's something that setups will that you'll be looking for your setup. You want to make sure your car can actually get over the curb. If it struggles over it, very easy to bottom out and slam into the barriers. So that's why we're seeing so many drivers taking so many different lines and level of curb through that corner, but also through the other curbs as well around the circuit. There's lots of high curbs around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. But looking at the gap there between McCauley and Boomy, it's not really came down by that much. The gap between them is 5.3 seconds. It was about 8 seconds 10 minutes ago. So here, as long as McCauley can keep some consistency and not fall under pressure, P2 is on the cards. And looking at the gap as well to Davidson, he's not actually lost that much time over the past 5 or 6 minutes. If anything, well, last lap he was only half a tenth slower than Davidson.
He's in the zone, and he's doing everything that he needs to hold that place. Mira tucks up underneath, trying to get himself in play, and there's Ben Ultria, who has done well to stave off now Jack Osborne, who has lost the place. So Jack there having a big wiggle off of that third chicane by the looks of things, and I think a slowdown penalty has now given Ben Ultria an extra place, and boy did he need that.
Yep, he certainly did. Another place up for him, as here is Mira and Evdoka battling for 8th place down towards turn 1. Evdoka's got a bit of a poor run into the first corner, actually. Mira was closing that gap down very, very quickly as they head into 1 and 2. And I think realistically Mira would want to get that move done because he was so quick in the first race. And in this race he's got moves done, but I think every time he caught to a car who was slower than him, he caught them at the wrong time and could never get through, so he's just kind of been stuck there all race. His pace hasn't been a problem, it's just he's been at the wrong place at the wrong time here.
Evdoka's had to defend all that first sector. A wiggle coming off the exit of turn 2 has opened up that chance, and now Anders Mira again looking for any angle to make that move, but the pure grunt of the Mustang, we haven't touched once all day about balance of performance over this championship. It's been one season to the next. They've been allowed one change of car here in iRacing terms, but the Mustang has by far and away been the most dominant machinery.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's been so quick around here this evening, and I think we saw that in both races, race 1 and race 2. High fuel, low fuel, it is the better car. So if you're in the Mustang, you've got a big advantage. And I think so far this season, the Mustang tends to be the quickest car around a lot of circuits. It overall is a very, very quick GT3. As we have 5 minutes to go in this race, it's Davidson that leads ahead of Macaulay, ahead of Boomy, and that gap there has now came down to 3.5 seconds, and Macaulay made a big mistake. He lost over a second on that last lap. He did a 34.0, Boomy a 32.9.
I think James Boomy's in push mode and Dan McCauley's on preservation. Mira closing up. They'll have to get by Ben Bennyworth there in the Aston Martin for Quartermass Motorsport. And then that's Matthias Pirhinen there in the distance in front. But it is all about the final stages of this race, how hard you can push. And I do note between them one Mr. Lee Berridge. So I can only think there for that second and third here that there was lap traffic, which is what cost the time a little bit there.
Certainly, as they all make their way through. And here's Anders Mira once again, looking to close in and make a move on Michael Evdoka as they head their way in towards turns 8 and 9. There's a lapped car ahead. They're basically saying, move, move, move. We want to make our way through. And this has really given an opportunity now to Anders Mira to close in a couple of tenths between him and Evdoka.
Well, is this going to be the pick that's needed? Because Bennyworth pulls over to the right-hand side, and so there's not a big chance to lunge down on the brakes from Anders Mira. He needs to now find another way to make this work. Inside now of 4 minutes to go, and so I'm looking around at that clock, 3:50. I think we might be on here a 1 minute, 1:30, 3 minutes. We're at 3 laps to go when they cross the line. And so now you're starting to count your chickens before they're hatched a little bit. Can I find time to go and make this move? Evdoka really wide, having to use the mechanical grip of the car to just pull it into the corner. And now Anders Mira, do you have a lunge to the inside? Oh, he had a think. He had a think. He got wide in the mirrors, but knew it's not wise yet to make that move.
Certainly, and once again keeping an eye on the gaps. Macaulay, who's only 4 tenths slower, James Boomy on the last lap. So it seems here potentially Macaulay could have that second place covered off. Davidson has been absolutely brilliant in this second race. I think he knows it was a disappointing first race for him, a big mistake at the start. Then it was a spin here at turn 6 and 7, and since then he's been absolutely flying. A brilliant job by Alexander Davison, and as I say that, he dropped 7 tenths to Daniel Macaulay.
Well, and the reason why for that is he had to get by the battling Adam Hedgecock and Ben Gregory for 21st and 22nd positions. So that's why he's dropped that time. There they are right now. Gregory is the car behind. Adam Hedgecock, the driver in front. It's Aston Martin out there behind, and it is trying to play away past a slightly damaged front right then of that AMG Mercedes. The grill's a little bit pushed in, but this is where you need the run off the exit, and this is what Gregory's hoping for. An Uber send at turn 1, not going to get it.
No, certainly not, and they're still going to battle that one out with 2 minutes to go. And things are now starting to close up even more between second and third. And then looking further back as well, the gaps are starting to increase. The only battle in the top 10 really is Evdoka and Mira, as they're battling for 8th place. Everybody else has got a decent gap to each other. And I think once again, hats off to Aidan Carter and William Guthrie too. 4th and 6th, a brilliant job from both of them in this race. I think, yes, Guthrie's made 7 spots. Carter's stayed where he started. Those two, hats off again. Brilliant job.
Well, I think Aidan Carter's done well. He'll take points off William Guthrie, but not many, and that's just a testament to how quick William Guthrie has been this season. I think he is a candidate to go to pro with the way that he has been driving about it, and now here comes the little move to the inside. Gregory picks it up and says, thank you, I'll stamp on it. And I'm looking at Dan McCauley. He's really dropped that time now. James Boomey has the hammer down, and Dan McCauley is feeling that pressure. I can only feel that he's seeing every corner as a place he struggles. They're side by side in front as they head towards that final lap of the race. Gregory on the inside, outside for Adam Hedgecock, and now side by side through the final chicane. Just enough room between the pair of them, and it's Hedge who takes that one over Ben Gregory, but they will have second and third on this final lap, battling it out for all honours. So here they go into this section. Boomy's not going to pick up the run in through turn number 1 and turn number 2. Now he's going to have to try and work out where to go. One car's going to move out of the way. Gregory very politely yields and lifts, and will try and use the pick then to get by Adam Hedgecock, who will have no responsibility to go through because he's an altitude car out there by all measures at the end of the day, and there has to be a little wiggle to the inside to get the clearance. Now Boomy's going to have the better run here coming off of turn 7, and Gregory behind's going to get that move done for placement, so that's going to be critical as they go. Next chicane comes along, it's going to be the right and left. Boomy, it's one line suits all through here, you're not going to get it done. Dan McCauley, hog the middle of the road, bud, if you want that P2, but McCauley will realise that it's there for James Boomy. He's got a great shot here, heavy defence, hefty defence, outside it will have to be for James Boomy on the last lap, can't get there, tries to stand him up on the exit. Oh, that's so cheeky from Dan McCauley. He didn't get drive as he goes through. They'll know the car in front has done all he could out there to stave the damage done in race 1. It will be Alexander Davidson who will come to the line and take the win in round 18, but will it be second or third for James Boomy? It's stand up in the middle of the corner again. Boomy can't get the run. Staunch from Dan McCauley. It's Davidson's win. It's Dan McCauley and Am in second, and James Boomy gets P3 and slowly reels that gap.
I mean, if that battle there doesn't make the highlight reel, I do not know what does. What a battle there between McCauley and Boomy. And here is Evdoka and Mira battling for position up to the line. Who will take 8th place? I think it was Evdoka by not even a tenth of a second, 80 thousandths between the two. Evdoka takes 8th, Mira 9th, and then Simnor raining off the top 10. But what a battle by McCauley and Boomy. And honestly, I don't think I've seen a more desperate drive like that from McCauley or anybody in this championship so far. He was so desperate, tried everything he could to keep ahead, and he did it at the final corner. Give it a lap or two more, there would have been no chance for McCauley to stay in second place.
Håkon Idlinmo wants a drag race to the line. He's not going to get the half a car length win. That was there for Michael Evdoka, so Jacques Ziva will hold heading towards the line, and again Paul Smith will be the last finisher on the leading lap by the looks of things. What a day's worth of racing here on RaceSpotTV. Alexander Davidson by 7.3 over the line ahead of the AM category leader, Dan McCauley, and with that result, pretty much erases all of the damage done in that first race, with James Boomy finishing 3rd and Aidan Carter there, your leading Pro-Am, in 4th. It's then Dennis Grabowski and William Guthrie 5th and 6th, with Matthias Pirhinen in 7th and Michael Evdoka ends up in 8th. Anders Mira and Dickie Simnor make up 9th and 10th in that field, as Ben Altria and Jack Osborne will be 11th and 12th. Arthur Thurtle, it's unlucky for him in 13th, with Tommy Fast, Tommy Vettel, making himself known early on in the race, but falling back to 14th, with Joe Coffin and Patrick Falconer 15th and 16th. It was then Tom Griffiths with Jacques Eva just staving off Håkon Idlinmo there in 19th. Your last finisher on the lead lap, Paul Smith there for Cracked Racing. A lap down, we saw the battle late between Benjamin Gregory and Adam Hedgecock. It was Gregory who got it it done ahead of Lee Berridge and Ben Bennyworth. Adam Watson 1 lap down and 2 for John Roberts, who got 2 speeding penalties down there in the pits. And retirees would include Jesse Payne-Wilkins, Brian Loynes, Taylor Lane, Drew Fletcher, and then over the page, Phil Samways, Michael Gray, and Ross McFarlane. A wheat and chaff separator for those who are on the fringes of the championship now. It looks all the more clear. And so, Nathan, as that comes into play, what a day it is. And almost next to no movement in the top of the Pro Championship. They might even be level on points heading over to the round in just 7 days' time at the circuit of the Brothers Rodriguez, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez.
Indeed, another track which is going to be very interesting when it comes to battling, and I can't wait to see what the drivers can produce there. Then, of course, Daytona, the championship finale. I don't think I could have really imagined of any track better than Daytona to end off a title race which has been insane all season long. And I believe Boomy might just about have that championship lead, but yet again, a couple of points are in it, and it could easily change when we get those points awarded and lost for the incident points.
Absolutely, and so this a championship you do not want to miss out on. Monday night is World GT Championship night, and it is the closest championship out there in sim racing at the moment. It has been must watch from start to finish, and the circuit Gilles Villeneuve has done its job. It's taken the pretenders out, and it's left us just with contenders. Championships in AM and Pro-Am look almost decided, but now with just 4 races left with 2 meetings to go, it's a case of Boomy and Davidson, get your duel out to the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and we'll see you in 7 days' time.